After watching all the episodes from the first season of this show, the second season, mainly the first 2 episodes that have been leaked, I have to admit that this show is still off to a good start when it comes to its characters. And even though that in the following season it's going to be the final season, I think that it's mostly up for how the show is executed when it comes to how the episodes are when it comes to characters. And for me personally, this episode really sums up of what the majority of the Owl House is going to be like. Separated Tides made me understand on the detail of what the Owl House does when it comes to its second season, because considering that Luz cannot respond to her mother because she doesn't have any Wi-Fi connection in the Borean Islands, not to mention at the fact that she still has a lot to learn by helping Edna and her sister to regain her powers back, it's just going to be a lot more complicated for Luz to fix most of the mistakes that she mostly caused in the previous season. And let me just say right now, I honestly thought that this episode, well, Luz is videotaping herself on to keep intact with her mother, as well her mother is about to be really paranoid at what's really going on, but unfortunately she can't be able to do that because there's no Wi-Fi in the Borean Islands, and this really made me appreciate what the second season is going to be mostly about. Well, yes, I'm fully aware that they have something set up when it comes to the finale of this season, but considering that this is kind of like the first season when it comes to episodes being its own thing and it's mostly episodic, I still think that this episode is mainly the aftermath from the first season's finale. And let me just say right now that the finale of the first season is probably the best when it comes to how the characters are getting themselves into, and the fact that Edna has turned into a monster. All the while, she doesn't have all of her powers 100% like she did once this series began. Same goes to her sister. I thought that Lilith in this season, mainly her motivations in order to find some other way to get her powers back along with Edna, is something that's going to be a contributing factor in this, but considering that I've watched Friendship is Magic and most of the premieres aren't really anything spectacular, I didn't really think that this premiere really didn't do much when it comes to her development. But rushing her development instead of giving her more episodes will probably be a poor decision. So with her being in the subplot with Hootie in this, while also growing a relationship with Hootie, with Luz and the other characters going on a journey to find some answers in order to give Edna and her sister her powers back, is probably a better choice. Granted, I don't consider this the best premiere when it comes to seasons, but at the same time, it's not that poorly executed. Granted, Edna only got on the boat so that she can steal money, but at the same time, Luz was doing the same thing as well. Let me just say this right now, that the relationship between these two characters is something I slowly grow into when it comes to the first season. But in this, considering that Luz is dealing with a situation that she caused in an episode previous while Edna and her sister lost their powers, she has to take matters into her own hands by fixing the wrong that she caused. Edna can't be able to do her powers in front of everyone, and the fact that people don't recognize her as a criminal because she doesn't have any powers really shows how the Borean Islands is much more different as you watch more episodes of it. Because even though that this is somewhat similar to how the real world functions, it still is mostly a fantasized world, while witches along with different creatures have different abilities, and every time I instantly see moments like these, it made me appreciate the world building of the Owl House a lot more than I give it credit for. As for her sister Lilith in this, since that I actually admire on the fact that she became the protagonist in this season after she is mostly reformed into the previous season, it is going to be exciting to see her development and her growth between her relationship with Edna and especially Luz. Because let me just say this right now, the fact that she's much slightly better than Edna when it comes to her powers at the moment, it is going to be interesting to see of how she's trying to put these somewhat limited powers into good use. So if you really think that Hope being in this episode is mostly good enough. Keep this in mind, this is only the first episode of the second season. However, if there's one thing I'm mostly concerned when it comes to her development, is how he's gonna be like once the series continues. I'm gonna be real right now, the development when it comes to story direction from other shows, mainly Star vs. the Forces of Evil, with its final episode, really affect most of the characters' development. And so is Steven Universe's future, which I am mostly biased towards. But at the same time, I'm pretty sure that the House won't be able to make those mistakes again. Not really again, but those mistakes, once they figure out some other arc to end off when it comes to the relationship of the characters in this. I'm gonna be real right now that I hope that for certain that the Owl House is much more ahead of time when it comes to its creativity. Same goes to Euphemia. But getting past those, I need to discuss the antagonist in this episode. I'm not highly sure if this is the Emperor or not, but I did see the ending of this episode. I'm going to assume that he's the Emperor, but I'm going to get to him later. With him in the screenshot that I'm showing you being mostly the antagonist, while also appearing at the following episode, I gotta say that his motivations in this while trying to convince Luz to do the deed in order to impress him so that he can act, so that she can prove her point on she can handle stuff on her own, is mostly a test for what Luz needs to learn. And I had to admit that the person that completely kept Kane hostage during the majority of this episode, it is going to be a lot more secretive when it comes to the reveal of how the Emperor functions in the Borean Isles. So let me just say this right now, as much as I really think that some of the antagonists in this show, from my knowledge, isn't really something I consider really memorable, but for what the show is leaning up to when it comes to later seasons, I am actually looking forward to what they're going to do in the third season when it comes to the Emperor. And let me just say this right now, when it comes to this season's finale, it's going to be mostly a surprise for what Disney has in store. As for the climax in this episode, centering around the dynamic of Luz and Edna, it's probably the most underrated stuff I've seen. I'm saying this because as much as I really think that the magic abilities from Edna and Luz in this is mostly the highlights, I still think that it's still not really the best when it comes to how it's portrayed. We mostly see their shadows while the antagonist of the episode just watches, and this only leads to a magic trick that Edna managed to do off screen. Not to say that this spell is terrible by any means, but at the same time, I just don't understand the spells that work in this show for the majority. Not to say that they're mostly complicated, but at the same time, it's mostly confusing to understand, and it's mostly from this bit right here. Granted, it's actually kind of cool that Edna manages to do one spell by having a monster turn to something else while Luz does the final blow, but with how this episode's pacing is when it comes to so many scenes going on, it felt like they were planning on doing an action sequence, but at the same time, they just couldn't be able to do it a lot when it comes to the amount of time that they had left. I have to say this right now, if we actually saw what was going on screen, we might have understand what Edna is trying to do, but since that we've seen it off screen, it's difficult for me to actually understand the purpose of what spell was. Even if it does include the scenes between Edna and Luz, which I have to admit, it really made me appreciate this pairing a lot more, but compared to how the season start off when it comes to how these characters' arcs are gonna go through, it is gonna be a lot more simple for future episodes that can easily top moments like these. I'm just saying, this isn't one of the worst moments, neither as one of the most forgettable moments, but at the same time, I still think that there are gonna be much more better moments as this series continues. And getting to the Emperor in this, since I've seen him in the previous season when it comes to the finale, it is going to be a lot more interesting to see how he's going to be like when it comes to his face reveal, because Let me just say this right now, he might be a relative towards Edna and her sister, but that's mostly the knowledge I have when it comes to how the second season is going to portray the Emperor. Like I said, this is still the beginning of the Owl House, and once we get into the 10th or 11th season from the second season, we're halfway there, but it is mostly debate on if this season, along with the following season, will have 20 episodes, just like the first season, even if the first season had 19 episodes. In conclusion, I don't think that this show's comeback after the hiatus happened since August of last year was really worth the wait, but at the same time, I'm still looking forward to what the second season has to offer. So for me personally, even if I'm not going to review all the episodes daily, I still be able to review one episode from the second season and review it for my Summerpalooza 3 videos for the next 2 months. I'm just saying this right now, it's mostly an episode of my choosing, and since I've already mentioned I've watched the first 2 episodes, I've already made up my mind, because after watching the synopsis of the future episodes, mainly for how they're gonna be like when it comes to execution, it's not really worth reviewing on, since I've already did a review off of one episode I'm gonna be uploading by the end of this month, which is mostly similar to those plot synopsis of the second season that I've read. But I'm still gonna be looking forward to what the second season has to offer after the hiatus. Granted, it's gonna go on another hiatus when it comes to midway through the season, but at the same time, just like every other cartoon, so I'm easily okay with that. I give this episode a 7.25 out of 10.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole